I guess we'll go ahead, and hopefully the panelists also online are getting settled in. Just for the records, this meeting is being recorded, so bear that in mind in case you are not aware that you have been informed. But it will be useful for other stakeholders who cannot follow the same time zone and for records later. So there are participants in the room, there are participants online, there are panelists, also 2 of you online and 2 in the room. Welcome to this side event, which is taking place in the second week of the 4th session of the Ad Hoc Committee on Cybercrime. My name is Anders Franson, and I work for the Civil Society Unit of the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, UNODC. Today, I have the honor of co-moderating this session with Ian Tennant from the Alliance of NGOs on Crime Prevention and Criminal Justice. Most of you know him very well under his other hat. However, as a backdrop for this meeting, this actually builds a little bit on a multi-stakeholder event that we held in early December, and it will serve the purpose of exchanging views on strengthening stakeholder participation in the ongoing cybercrime negotiations, which includes stakeholders that are not official observers to the negotiations and those who cannot attend the process directly for any other reasons, but who want to be engaged. Now, thus far, however, the Ad Hoc Committee on Cybercrime has provided ample space and inclusion of civil society organizations, private sector, and academics. As you may be aware, the committee approved more than 200 organizations to participate at the onset of the negotiations through a call for participation, referred to as the OP9 stakeholders, but also any organizations that has ECOSOC accreditation may also attend. In addition to that, the Ad Hoc Committee last year held 3 separate intersessional consultations with stakeholders, with a 4th one scheduled in March and a 5th one in June. And as you have seen during this past week, multi-stakeholders are invited to speak in the plenary under each of the agenda items, but also are invited to share inputs and suggestions with the co-facilitators of the informal sessions on the articles, clusters, and chapters being negotiated. And this is a new novel approach, I would say, that we are seeing for the first time. So that is very welcome and another sign of inclusion into this negotiation process. In summary, this all demonstrates how strongly the member states count on the rich expertise of civil society organizations and the private sector and academics in elaborating this convention. But before we introduce the panelists, let me pass the floor to Ian, including for some welcoming remarks on behalf of the Alliance of NGOs.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Anders, for the introduction. I'd like to welcome everybody here on behalf of the Alliance of NGOs on Crime Prevention and Criminal Justice. Our chair, Anna Alvazzi del Frate, unfortunately could not be with us today, so I'm delivering some opening remarks on her behalf. The Alliance, for those of you who don't know, is an umbrella body of more than 100 civil society organizations working on crime prevention and criminal justice issues. We facilitate the engagement of NGOs with the main UN bodies here, including the annual UN Crime Commission, the UNTOC Conference of Parties, and we are engaged with this process of the Ad Hoc Committee on Cybercrime as well. And from our experience, when we look at the other bodies that we are dealing with, this process, the Ad Hoc Committee, has been inclusive, very inclusive, in fact, both in its design and its implementation, which in many ways is remarkable and welcome. And from what we have seen in the process so far, there's been a diverse range of stakeholders taking part and adding technical, substantive, and political inputs on a regular basis, whether that's in the official meetings, in the intersessional meetings, in side events like this, or in written submissions. And I don't think the quality, the quality cannot be overstated. It's been very, very substantive and welcomed and from member states, and there is clearly demand, as Anders said. However, it's also fair to say that there is more that we, as the multi-stakeholder community, can do to ensure that the broadest possible range of voices and perspectives are included. And it's vital that we adapt our methods and our modes of engagement as the process adapts. We've seen this week and last week that the negotiation process by the member states is getting more flexible. There is more informal elements that are closed to multi-stakeholders. So there's a need for us to adapt to that and be able to contribute as we go forward. There's also a need, I think Anders mentioned this, and this has been referenced by some of the other multi-stakeholders in communications with the chair, that there are lots of NGOs and individuals and others who are not registered with this process, but this process is still going to go on for some more time, at least a year or two. And we will need to be able to ensure that those people who haven't been able to officially register can engage in some way, whether they're prominent private sector stakeholders with influence in the digital space, or whether they are small civil society organizations with specific perspectives and experiences in different communities, whether they're protecting victims or defending digital rights more generally. In the panel today, we're looking forward to hearing to some of those involved as multi-stakeholders in this process committee so far, to hear from them on their priorities and what we can do to ensure that this inclusive process that we've seen so far continues to be as inclusive as it evolves and moves forward into the future. So thank you very much. I'll hand back to Anders.
Thanks, Ian. I'm sorry that Anna couldn't be here. The first speaker that I have the pleasure to introduce is on my left side, Pavlina Pavlova from the Cyber Peace Institute. Starting with a question. Coming from an organization engaged in a wide range of other cyber-related processes at the UN, what lessons can be learned to ensure that the engagement of multi-stakeholders can be maintained and strengthened in this process? And what does your organization see as the major priorities for engagement going forward?
Thank you very much. And thank you very much for the kind invitation to be here. We are very happy to share our views, whether to this process, or as we engage in more for what are the comparisons. This is what I will be discussing today, so bear with me. I have some points, I have multiple points, and feel free to stop me when I exceed the welcome here. So just a very, very brief introduction of the Cyber Peace Institute. Is an independent and neutral non-governmental organization which is based in Geneva. The Institute strives to reduce the frequency, impact, and scale of cyber attacks and to hold actors accountable for the harm they cause in cyberspace. We engage in multilateral fora to raise awareness of the risks of cyber attacks for people and to call for respect of human rights and laws in cyberspace. The Institute follows several ongoing processes at the United Nations, and as they relies to the construction of cyberspace, which is our main mission, and the protection of cyberspace at the international level. We have been participating very actively at the open-ended working group on cybersecurity. We have participated in also ad hoc committee on cybercrime, and we organized the multi-stakeholder workshop on program of action, which is a process in making, which will be discussing cyber use of ICTs or cybersecurity from the point of international security. So I will be comparing these processes and the involvement of stakeholders. Just bear in mind that Open-ended Working Group and POA are first committee processes under the UN, and ad hoc committee is a third committee process. So there are very naturally some differences in this. When it comes to participation and engagement of stakeholders, so to your first question, there are two factors which are determining how stakeholders participate, and one is whether they are enabled, and the other factor is whether they're encouraged. When it comes to enabling stakeholders to the process, I speak about formal representation because formal representation matters. Procedural modalities shape the substantive discussions and the ways in which states interact with stakeholders. The participation of relevant stakeholders should be incorporated in a comprehensive and systematic manner. And ad hoc modalities are in many respects the golden standard for stakeholder participation. Other processes, such as the open-ended working group and the program of action, is rather hard to compare because it's still a process which only had the resolution being passed with short mention of stakeholderism as a component to the process. But these processes should take example of what is happening at the ad hoc committee in regard to stakeholderism. And the fact that around 200 organizations have been accredited to the process is an important milestone that shows that stakeholders indeed can have a voice at these processes. Just a very short comparison to the open-ended working group. Formally, there is enabled participation of interested stakeholders to the process, but the veto powers are not being challenged by vote. So once a country vetoes organization, it's vetoed for the substantive session. An organization can reapply, but the result is expected to be the same or similar. So states have utilized this non-objection mechanism not judiciously, and 32 organizations saw a veto in the previous negotiations, with 54 being accredited and 17 participating in the process because they have ECOSOC status. So this clearly shows that stakeholders are in many cases officially enabled, but there can be other barriers in the process, and we should be mindful of the official modalities, formal modalities for the process, because they truly decide how participants from the stakeholder community can engage in the processes. On the other hand, not to only point to the states or to the UN bodies, stakeholders also should clearly show the value they bring to the table, whether it's in the discussions and with their contributions or with their interventions at the process. We cannot highlight enough that in our interventions, we always focus on bringing the value to the table and speaking about points which are relevant to our work, which we see in our expertise and from our experience. And on the second point, that stakeholders should be also encouraged. And this is more about the unseen kind of modalities around the process to create an enabling environment. And there are three factors, and I'm not sure how much into the detail I can be going on them. But if I have green light, I will. So I will speak about predictability of the process, information sharing, and meaningful involvement. On the predictability point, and this is just from our experience, maybe some organizations, I do believe that we have shared experiences across, especially civil society, but bear in mind that this is on what we are witnessing, taking active participation in these processes. So it's important on the predictability that time slots for stakeholders would be in the agenda and clearly marked. This is for the point that, for example, for negotiations which take lengthy time, like 2 weeks, it's not possible for civil society organizations to devote often like so much funding for the people to be 2 weeks on a travel, or to devote so much time to the negotiations that they would be fully active for 2 weeks. We also see it with many countries who have limited resources, which have smaller delegation. Negotiations like this, which are heavy on the agenda and also on the length of the time, are quite a heavy burden on smaller organizations too, and smaller delegations to cope with and to follow the process diligently. So having devoted stakeholder segments, at least at some days, shows the clarity and predictability how and when stakeholders can come and can speak on the process. The second is clarity on which sessions and channels are open to stakeholders. And this has been very well done at this process, but with other UN processes, we see that it's sometimes not clear who can attend intersessional intersessional meetings, who can attend side events, who is allowed to come there, whether they will be hybrid format, online or in person. This everything is making planning for civil society organizations which want to be engaged very difficult. The second point on information sharing, having timely and easily accessible information and having them disseminated to stakeholders is crucial. It's important to keep in mind that contact people can change and ensure this continuity. And I must confess that with this process, it has been a very successful road so far, because the information have been released on time. It's easy to keep the continuity. The stakeholders are sent reminders about, for example, new negotiating drafts and SATA. They are kept in the loop, and there is truly sufficient time allowed to create their positions. This has not been the case in some other negotiations, where when you get something in a very short period of time, it's hard to bring the value to the table with a fully fledged position on the issue, supported by your work and by the findings of your organization. And when I speak about meaningful involvement, I speak why multi-stakeholderism should not be only a box checking exercise. It's sometimes, sometimes you have the component of stakeholders included, but it's not just about having a voice. It's also important to see that the voice is being listened to. And while we understand that multilateral discussions are challenging for any party involved in them, and this is a state-led process, it's hard for organizations to prioritize their engagement in such fora if they don't see the impact. And they can they can become disengaged in the long run. For this part, I find that coalition building is vital for organizations which have something to add to the process, but they cannot fully participate, or they have some very specific expertise and they want to offer it, they want to inform the processes, and they want to be informed about the processes, but they cannot be coming for a week or two of negotiations. And in this sense, they can still have their feedback being gathered to for example, the feedback on the documents, or the particularities of their work and the data supporting some arguments being gathered and then presented as larger document by civil society coalition. So this is very important work, especially for the engagement of organizations in the long run, so they don't feel discouraged that they devoted resources to a process and they don't see how their voices are being represented. And should I stop here or can I continue on the priorities?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wrap it up.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm going to go moderate for the online speakers, but thank you very much, Pavlina, for really giving us a good insight into how this process compares to other similar cyber processes from your perspective as a somebody who's engaged in more than one. And I think we'll pick up on some of the themes that you brought up as we go through the rest of the panelists and with the Q&A afterwards. Next, I would like to go from the kind of global civil society angle from a Geneva-based institution. I would like to go now to the private sector. So online, we have Timea Suto from the International Chamber of Commerce. Timea, your organization represents a broad range of private sector stakeholders. You've been very active in these negotiations and other multilateral processes. So I just wanted to ask you if you could focus your remarks on why you think your private sector constituency considers it important to engage with the proceedings at the ad hoc committee, and what more can be done to ensure that the private sector is engaged at the broadest possible level in this process as it moves forward. Thank you very much and good to see you.
Thanks, Ian. Good to see everyone. It was great to see all of you in Vienna last week. As Pavlina said, we can't all afford to be there for 2 weeks, so I had to jump back home, but glad that technology allows us to meet in a hybrid fashion as well. And before I start talking, thanks to the Alliance and to the UNODC Civil Society Unit for inviting me. It's really great to be with all of you. First of all, I want just to take a moment to tell you who we are, because the International Chamber of Commerce, short for ICC, it might be a confusing name to some of you. What is clear is that we are not the International Criminal Court, neither are we, my favorite ICC, the International Cricket Council. So we are the institutional representative of more than 45 million companies in over 100 countries. And our mission is to make business work for everyone, every day, everywhere. What we do is we promote international trade, responsible business conduct, and a global approach to regulation. And we do this through a mix of advocacy, business solutions, and standard setting. We are a membership organization, and our members include many of the world's leading companies, SMEs, business associations, and also local chambers of commerce. What we do is we represent business interests and provide business input at the highest levels of intergovernmental decision-making. We do that at the World Trade Organization, for example, at the United Nations as permanent observers to the UN General Assembly, or at the G20. And in this capacity, this is our capacity to bring and bridge really the public and private sectors. And this is what sets us apart as a unique institution responding to the needs of any stakeholder involved in international commerce. As I said, ICC is a membership organization, and our understanding of business arises from the expertise of our members, most of whom are involved in international commerce. And that means that from banking regulation and global taxation to digital policy and climate change, the strength and also the legitimacy of our advocacy work and rules making derives from the fact that they are developed through extensive and iterative consultation with member companies. At present, directly involved in our specialized working bodies are over 3,000 individual business experts that establish our business stance on a broad range of issues. And their know-how and vision continually evolves and updates our knowledge so that ensures that our positions are really up to date with everyday reality of businesses on the ground. In turn, our members and experts count on us to get business views across to governments and intergovernmental organizations in particular. And of course, on those decisions that affect corporate operations worldwide as a priority. Our policy commissions, as we call them, there are 12 of them at ICC, one on digital that I lead, comprises business experts who examine these major issues of interest to the business world. They prepare our policy products, including statements and recommendations, to contribute to intergovernmental discussions, as well as our rules and codes to facilitate international business transactions. So this is what we do and who we are, and why we are here is, I think, goes without saying, that the private sector is, of course, one of the frequent victims of cybercrimes, but also as developers, deployers, and operators of digital infrastructures and systems, here included critical infrastructure, the private sector is often sort of a first responder and a crucial actor in fighting cybercrime, in cooperation with governments and all of those stakeholders. Therefore, we feel that there are a lot of lessons learned and good practices that we can bring to the table and share as this convention is being developed. But also there are pitfalls and potential negative consequences that we can point to that can be useful in these conversations. So how are we participating and what can be done to improve the participation of private sector, to respond to your main question? first of all, what we do and how we participate and how we rally our constituency around this issue is we explain before the process starts, or as the process is starting, we explain to our members what it is, what it means for them, and how does it affect their business and their everyday work. From there on, we form dedicated working groups with those people who want to be very clearly and directly engaged on these issues. And then we put forward an iterative process to develop our positions, our improve our understanding as well of what we can bring to the table. And that, as I said, is an iterative mechanism. And then what we offer to our members is, of course, the representation. I agree with Pavlina on the issues that it's very difficult to involve directly all the stakeholders who have a stake in this, because everybody has everyday jobs, and observing UN processes is a job for very few of those who should be involved in these conversations. So what we also offer as we develop our positions together with our members, we also offer this representation on their behalf. Of course, there are many challenges to participation. Here, I just want to mention a few. Pavlina did a great job in comparing it to other processes, so I won't delve into that. But I do want to start by really commending the AHC. It in many aspects, it's quite a unique and open process. There's a lot of others that don't have this level of opportunity for meaningful participation of stakeholders. But in terms of challenges that we see with business, first of all, I think it's very important that businesses need to understand how a UN process that sometimes, especially when we speak of small businesses or small business associations or chambers of commerce, it's the UN is very removed from the everyday reality. So we need to, I think, explain, first of all, how a process is relevant to them. Secondly, once it is understood that this is relevant and they have relevant information to contribute and relevant experiences to share here, they also need to understand the process on how to contribute. And this, again, is sometimes very straightforward to those of us who observe many UN processes, are constantly engaged in these conversations. But for everyday businesses, it's very difficult to understand what a process of participating of stakeholders is, what's an accreditation process, what needs to happen there. Once you're accredited, where you need to go to find the information on how to actually participate, how to stay in contact, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot of information sharing and proactive outreach, I think, from the part of these processes that needs to happen to reach those stakeholders who are not directly in the scope of or directly involved in your everyday work with stakeholders, and organizations like ours and a lot of others that are here on this panel today, or the Alliance, for example, can help with that. And then thirdly, and I can't stress this point enough, it's very difficult to afford to be present for lengthy negotiations. And I don't just mean this in financial terms. It's, of course, there's a cost associated with traveling in person to any meeting, especially meetings in capitals or large cities around the world. They tend to be costly. But of course, it's also costly in terms of time. And the smaller an organization gets, the fewer people or man hours we have at our disposal to devote to these conversations. So I think it is very, what Pavlina said, I can only put a big +1 to that. We need to have predictability in how this conversations are going, when there is opportunity for stakeholders to contribute, and then on what exactly we are asking stakeholder contributions on, so that contributions can really be meaningful, to the point, and relevant to the conversations. So this can be done, of course, by having agendas set early on, having draft texts published early on, so that consultations, especially in organizations like mine that are membership organizations that have to go through a number of internal procedural steps to get to positions, we have sufficient time to prepare that. I also want to commend the way that the intersessionals are done in the AHC. I think those are also an example to follow, especially that there is enough time in advance for speakers to apply, that there is at least clarity in the general idea on what will be discussed in those intersessionals. If I can offer a few points for improvement when calling for speakers, I think it would be very helpful to have the sessions already sort of defined, or at least the main questions, not just the general topic that the next intersessional will be on international cooperation and implementation measures, but what specifically that the questions will be that we will consider, and to involve stakeholders in the planning of those sessions, so that we know that we can nominate experts that are really can speak to the issues that matter. I also would like to offer a couple of other points for improvement, and we are of course happy to help with that. Is I mentioned outreach to stakeholders, and for those governments who are in the room, I would also like to offer a suggestion that you reach out at the national level to the stakeholders that you are involved with, to your local business associations, to your national chambers of commerce, to other civil society or academic institutions that you are aware of, that you've collaborated with in the past, and invite their input as you are developing your own positions at a national level. That removes, I think, the remoteness of a process like this from the local realities, and it also removes a lot of the cost in participating by stakeholders. I think one more thing, and then I will stop here, is outreach by the process itself, by the UN itself, into events where industry and civil society are already participating. There are a number of international events that bring together multi-stakeholder conversations on cyber issues. Participating there, making sure that people are aware that there is a process on the way there where stakeholder inputs are welcomed and encouraged, would also be extremely helpful in reaching the non-usual suspects for these conversations. So I'm going to stop there. There's a lot more that I could say, but I'm sure that I already exceeded by far my 5 minutes. So thank you for the opportunity, and I'm ready to speak to any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Timia, for the detailed suggestions and inputs. I have at least 10 points jotted down, very, very useful for us indeed going forward. We can wait for the Q&A if other people have questions for you. So let us move to the next speaker. On my right is Elizabeth Mendoza from the organization called Hyperderecho. The question to you, Elizabeth, including your organization, there is a strong cohort of digital rights-based organizations from your region engaged in the ad hoc committee. And we've seen many of them here actually the last week. What more can be done to ensure the regional and local perspectives that you bring, and that these can be considered by the ad hoc committee? And what issues are of most importance to the civil society organizations in your region?
Thank you. Good afternoon with everybody. My name is Elizabeth Mendoza. I'm from Peru and I work in Hyperderecho. We are an NGO that focuses on human rights and liberties in context of technologies. We also have a lot of work and research on gender-based violence. So that's what we do most of the time. And yeah, respect of Latin American organizations. We are not as many as I wish, but there is a fairly significant number of representatives of digital organizations that we have been following the sessions of the ad hoc committee of South America and the Caribbean. However, if we only talk about South America, the number of representatives is greatly reduced. There is a big problem with face-to-face assistance due to the distances in our regions and the cost involved in coming to Vienna or Europe. And about online participations, assistance in time zones are very different, which increases the difficulty to participate. We have like a 6 hours difference, so it's hard to follow the whole session during 2 a.m. or 4 a.m. And about what can we do to be heard? I think it's important to understand that the participation of stakeholders is relevant due to the specializations we have in different topics and the research we have carried in these topics to be heard, unite and raise what are the urgent issues according to our context, makes a strength. I think we have a lot of information to give from our countries with what is the reality, what we need. It's important to share with countries and delegations. And also about that, I think we need to have the support of our states and their representatives. I'm aware that there are a lot of efforts to have stakeholders' participations involved. I think we can try to have a little more time to talk during the sessions in order to have the opportunity to share what we know with the states. And about the topics that we think are the most important, we think that human rights perspective it's mainly topic, and also to take the importance to the digital breach in our countries. I think it's an urgent terms because many Latin American countries do not have the necessary tools to legislate and prevent cyber crimes. So we really need the work for increase what we know and what we can do with cyber crimes. Also, gender perspective in order to recognize who are the most affected by these crimes, including women and LGBTIQ plus community or dissidences. Also, defense of professional journalists and media. Many times, these types of international texts are used in our countries to include in domestic law rules that penalize professions' work or seek to interpret the rule to prosecute these professionals. And also, the convention must have an objective analysis of protection needs and sources of danger. In this way, the actions to be taken must be framed in the reduction of the identified sources of danger and in the legal assets to be protected. Its application must affect the results of the analysis seeking the least possible violation of freedoms and rights. Limitations and restrictions on the use of cyberspace must be based on situations of need or public safety. Rights and freedoms should not be violated unless strictly necessary. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth, for bringing those perspectives from your region, including the practical challenges of traveling from so far away, and as well as the policy issues that you're focused on. I'm sure there'll be lots of questions. Okay, so we're going to go from Peru to Pakistan now and welcome Tariq Kosa, the director of the Center for Governance Research in Pakistan. He's also a board member of the Alliance of NGOs, and wearing my other hat very briefly, I'm also delighted that he is a member of the network of experts of the Global Initiative Against Transnational Organized Crime. So, Tariq, you're working with a broad range of civil society in your country to prevent and counter organized crime, from human rights experts to former law enforcement officials and others. What do you think this committee, this ad hoc committee, can do to further increase dialogue between diverse parts of civil society and government? And what priorities do you see from civil society in your region for this negotiation? Thank you, Tariq, and good to see you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I am grateful to UNODC Civil Society Unit and Alliance of NGOs for giving me an opportunity to participate in this panel discussion. The three panelists earlier have made some excellent recommendations, points, and observations. And my background is that of law enforcement. The Center for Governance Research that I represent was basically constituted to deal with criminal justice issues, and inspired by an international best practice like Global Initiative Against Transnational Organized Crime, we in Pakistan, on behalf of civil society, launched the National Initiative Against Organized Crime in 2019. And on behalf of civil society, we have reached out to state stakeholders and also worked on a national strategy against serious and organized crime by forging a concerted kind of an effort between the state and society. So important point for the civil society is to reach out to the state stakeholders in the context of the priorities that we feel related with serious and organized crime challenges in our country. So based on that, last year we came up with this national security strategy against serious and organized crime, and we found that in all the serious and organized crimes, the cross-cutting aspect was the cybercrime element. So therefore, this electronic crime law of Pakistan was discussed, debated with different stakeholders, and we noticed that there were certain clauses that violated fundamental human rights. And in that context, we supported public interest litigation in the higher courts of the country, and the Capital Court's Chief Justice revoked and turned down and deleted some of those concerns that the civil society had raised in the context of striking a balance between human rights and law enforcement. And as a recognition of that, on behalf of the civil society, we declared the Chief Justice of then Capital's Court as Person of the Year, recognizing that judiciary can play a very important role. The state stakeholders, when they take the right steps, they deserve appreciation by the civil society. So therefore, that was one lesson, that we need to do advocacy, we need to reach out, and civil society and public interest litigation has to be supported. That was one important lesson. The other aspect of how we came up to launch a civil society alliance against transnational organized crime was when Pakistan was going through this UNTOC review process. And we are in the cluster one. That process is underway in collaboration with the UNODC Civil Society Unit, in collaboration with the Global Initiative and our Pakistani civil society. We were able to raise 50 civil society organizations and NGOs, experts, lawyers, private sector, academia, to get together, form a platform and a joint kind of a platform, and to deal with this transnational organized crime. This has been an extremely successful endeavor, and it has been recognized by UNODC as well by launching the first pilot initiative in Asia, in Pakistan, on the 15th of September last year. So we are very grateful that we got this recognition globally. And so this is a partnership between civil society, the state stakeholders, as well as all the other best practices that we got. Mexico launching the first global initiative in the context of UNTOC review. So our civil society groups have now formed 3 working groups on behalf of civil society. One is a working group of legal experts. And based on our experiences of UNTAC and UNCAC, the UN Conventions on Transnational Organized Crime and Corruption, Anti-Corruption, I think it is important, while we are examining this new convention or the ad hoc committee, which I agree with Ian, the process has been very inclusive. It is very encouraging. The civil society voices are being heard, and this is a very constructive engagement which is underway. And so from that perspective, we thought that a dedicated group of lawyers and experts dealing with the legal aspects of this convention and the articles that are being now in the fourth session are being discussed. So our legal experts are going through those, putting up at our before the civil society. So this is a working group on this AHC, this convention on cybercrime. The second working group is basically dealing with organized crime challenges facing Pakistan. And this is, we are not only examining our standards from the global initiative index that was launched in 2021 and is underway for the next year's, this year's new, performance indicators. So we are sensitizing the state stakeholders on behalf of civil society as to how we can improve, how the state can improve its performance, and civil society will reach out and be a partner. The challenges, of course, are that you have to establish trust. The civil society's voice has to be understood, and we have to reach out. So state and society forging a partnership is a crucial element. And thirdly, and most important, is the perspective of human rights and victims' perspectives. Therefore, our third working group is exclusively focused on these aspects of fundamental human rights, the victims of violent extremism, terrorism, and organized crime in Pakistan and others. And some of these NGOs and civil society organizations have done a great job in the context of this. So we are putting together some SOPs, some guidelines for the state and other stakeholders as to how to deal with the victims of these serious and organized crime, and put up these SOPs and how to launch them and implement them. So this is all in all, I think, a process which has been, we have been learning as we go along, and it is truly a partnership. The challenges have to be overcome. Most important thing is the civil society has to reach out to the state stakeholders. Secondly, the civil society has to forge an alliance, a platform. It's a collective voice which is the key and so important. And we are truly grateful that UNODC Civil Society Unit, the UNTOC Secretariat, and Global Initiative Against Transnational Organized have provided us with some of the examples of best practice, international best practice, which has been helpful. So I see these challenges as opportunities for improvement. And this AHC convention, or the treaty which is being debated, I think we need to learn from UNTAC and UNCAC's experiences and also try and improve. I feel that it is important that protections and safeguards need to be built in this convention. And for that, some independent safeguards, mechanisms must be put in place so that checks and balances do exist. In fine, I would say that it is a balance between human rights and law enforcement, a balance between what the state functions are and what vibrant civil society can contribute. And the primacy on behalf of the civil society basically rests that if all these actors adhere to the fundamental human rights, the constitutional obligations, and the rule of law. So that, Anders and Ian, is the focus that has been in Pakistan. Our experience is encouraging. We are learning. And as we learn from all three panelists who have made excellent suggestions, I think we've noted them. These are some very good examples of way forward. Thank you for that input. Thank you so much.
Thank you too, Tariq, calling in from Pakistan, and for your wise words as always. I do take strong note of your mentioning not only of your own experience in Pakistan and how you managed to form an alliance of civil society organizations when it comes to the implementation of the UNTOC, but also on your urging other stakeholders in other countries to do the same when it comes to matters that are of importance to them, such as clearly the cybercrime negotiations and convention being negotiated. It's clearly one of those that will make a mark for all of us going forward. So that is something I will mention briefly at the very end of this meeting, but forming alliances and networks, that's one of the things that the civil society unit does. So we can support with that going forward. But before that, we do have about 10 minutes or so for a question and answers. My colleague Aliyah maybe will post a little poster on the backdrop, and we welcome anyone to share your comments or thoughts or questions you may have to the panelists or other contributions you may want to share towards these questions. So the floor is open, including for those online. And we really want to hear from you, so don't be shy. Yeah, go ahead. I see G-Talk in the room.
Hi, everyone. I'm Darren Brookbanks. I work as an analyst at the Global Initiative Against Transnational Organized Crime. I think my question is probably, it's a law enforcement-based question, so I imagine it's probably for Tariq. I recalled a mention during some of the HC negotiations by a representative from law enforcement around whether law enforcement is systemically mature enough to implement some of that which has been envisioned in the negotiations. And I'm just interested to hear from Tariq whether he thinks what is being asked for of law enforcement can be reconciled with what law enforcement is actually able to implement going forward with the AHC convention negotiations. Thank you.
So if you permit, Anders and Ian, Darren, thank you for raising this issue in the context of law enforcement and their capacity to deliver and what they're being asked for in this the convention. I think in the purpose which is highlighted is the developed countries have to support the developing countries in developing capacity, expertise, and professionalism in this area of cyber-related criminal activities, the digital world, the challenges of AI and others which are emerging. So it is very encouraging that the purpose stated is that those who have to advance in these areas in the context of technical expertise, professionalism, and training will be supported. And that is very encouraging. We find some gaps. There are challenges in the context of law enforcement processes, investigative techniques, the prosecution methods, the trials, and others. We are trying to identify those gaps. And certainly, Darren, this process of AHC, the convention, is mindful of taking along and building the capacity of law enforcement. I'm sure those aspects are being attended to and need to be attended. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to G-Talk and for the reply from Tariq. The next question, please, from online is Gian Sarson, please.
Thank you. I'm sitting in Nova Scotia, Canada, so it's interesting to listen to everyone. And I am also a member of the NGO of Crime Alliance. And the question I have is really related to all of the attendants who are presenting, is when you're looking at cyber crimes, are you also looking at the issues of who are the most victimized, whether it's women and girls, whether it's children? And I think about this around human trafficking, around the crimes that are committed through cybercrime. And I'm also thinking about it as a grandparent, because I considered myself quite knowledgeable, and I really became a victim of extortion because of very sophisticated organized crime. So I started looking at the issue of cybercrime around the age factor, from young to older individuals. So I was just wondering if all of you are looking at it from that perspective. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your question. Definitely for the Cyber Peace Institute, we had discussions today whether we should refer to in these provisions to these groups as vulnerable groups, what kind of vulnerable groups, name them, or keep it extensive, or groups in vulnerable situations. So in my answer, I will just move forward from this from this vocabulary, and I will just say that for us it's one of the priorities to focus on these issues, because the whole institute has been based on the idea of helping those in vulnerable situations to cope with cyber crimes, and then so we have been facilitating the mapping and analysis of cyber attacks in the humanitarian sector, in healthcare sector, and in times of crisis. This is including assessing the impact and harm. We specifically, with each cyber attack, we look at the impact and harm it caused to the people and to the communities and society as such. And this is for bringing greater awareness for accountability and transparency in cyberspace. I will mention one other activity, and this is working closely with the most vulnerable victims of cyber attacks, and coordinating recovery efforts and helping communities and developing and humanitarian NGOs to become more cyber resilient. And when we engage in this process with our statements, Ansata, we always derive our statements from the expertise we have. And this is the expertise we have to see people in vulnerable situations, how they are being impacted by cybercrime, and what we can do about it, and what is the place of this convention in tackling cybercrimes globally.
Thank you, Pavlina. Any other reflections on that?
Yes, I think that it's important to keep in mind that human rights approach and the gender approach in cyber attacks, these approaches will guide the development of public policies, respecting the rights and freedoms of cyberspace users and the rights of passive subjects of illicit conduct in cyberspace. It is necessary to identify the rights and freedoms involved, as well as the possible recurring victims of illicit behaviors committed through the use of ICTs. For example, owners, women, the LGBTIQ community, children, activists, among other minorities in cyberspace. So I strongly believe that any measures on cybersecurity must have at the center the person and their human rights and freedoms. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from the floor or online? Yes. Sorry. Yes, Linda, go ahead.
Hello, I'm Linda McDonald from Nova Scotia as well, and I'm a proud member of the Crime Alliance. And I'm also part of the working group on non-state torture with the Crime Alliance. And this question is for Tarek or anyone who wants to answer. In Canada, we have an organization that's done research on cybercrime with children. And they've noted that at least 25% of child crime scene pornography is bondage or torture. And the same research and the same numbers in the UK as well. So I'm wondering if in the convention there is an inclusion around torture, because some of the cybercrime can amount to torture and non-state torture, because these are organized crime and they are non-state torturers. Thank you.
Maybe Tariq, you want to?
Thank you. Okay. I think both Jean and Linda have raised a very important aspect of victims of abuse or disadvantaged sections of society. our experience is that it is the women and children who are subjected to this kind of abuse, and the cybercrime related overwhelming or majority of cases relate to the women and children and abuse. So we hope that lots of emphasis is going to be placed in this treaty or in this convention in creating certain safeguards or certain elements against this kind of gruesome crime which is carried out against women and children. So I would fully support Jean and Linda for their work which they are doing on in the working group on non-state against non-state actors who are subjecting people to torture, and overwhelmingly it's children and women. So yes, our full support is there for you. Thank you.
And just if I can respond as well, just as somebody who's been observing the negotiations, even we're still at a place in the negotiations where even the definition of cybercrime is not there yet, but there is a very extensive draft chapter in the treaty, or draft section in the treaty on the online child sexual abuse material, which is at quite an early stage compared to other issues, is gaining consensus, and the chair has split the issues up into things that are controversial, need more negotiations and informals, and things that that are in the text. And this is one of the issues that's in the text. So I think that's quite important to point out. I don't know if there are any more questions from the floor. Mirella, the Chief of the Civil Society Unit here at UNODC.
Thank you, Ian, and thank you to all the stakeholder speaker who commended a bit this process and highlighted that it's unique in the UN in terms of communication sharing and inclusivity. And I do agree, because I am also on the stakeholder, even if I'm UN myself. I just want to come back to a comment that you made at the beginning, Ian, and it would be more important for me to think about it, because you have mentioned there is a need to increase this list of stakeholders, at least those who are now formally participating. I was personally very much involved in putting together this list when we were asked between New York and my office, try to reach out to people, put the list, and obviously the process had not even started, so it's much more difficult to attract attention before than now during the session. So I mean, probably I don't want you to answer immediately, but I would be happy to think about, especially if, as you said, it may goes along for 1 or more year, how we can increase. Of course, you have formally and informally the participation of stakeholders. Thank you.
Thanks, Mirella, and yeah, I'm happy to answer that. I think, I mean, this issue has been highlighted. I mean, unfortunately, yeah, when you look at the formal the formal meetings, I don't think there's anything that can be done about the list as it is. It is a very long list, but there are, as you say, lots more people and organizations who have become aware of it since it started, and now it's closed. So I think it's up to us as the multi-stakeholder community, as well as those member states with an interest in supporting as broad as participation as possible, that we come up with different ways of including these organizations and these people in the process, probably on a more informal basis as it goes forward.
So yeah, we are still have a couple minutes in case there are any more reflections here. Otherwise, there will be, of course, many other opportunities to meet again. This process is a lengthy one, but in terms of there will be many more sessions to come. But we do welcome any more last-minute questions or remarks to this end. Yeah, sure, of course.
Just some points to your question. For example, I don't know how practical it would be with ad hoc committee, probably, or the assess this. But open and working group, it has different modalities. I explained them at the beginning, but it also reopens the accreditation process for those who were not accredited. So the organizations who have been accredited are accredited to the whole process, but those stakeholders who have been vetoed, which as I said, is majority of those. It's almost half of those who applied. It opens the process again, so they can reaccredit to the process. But I also think there is important role for civil society organizations as such prior to the process. Cyberpeace Institute has issued, together with Cybersecurity Tech Accord Initiative, multi-stakeholder manifesto speaking about the process. So there is also a role for other stakeholders. And as we speak about multi-stakeholderism, all stakeholders should be active. It's on the side of the UN as such, because it's UN-driven process, but also others should kind of strive for their place and be actively engaged in these processes and getting information. So there's a role for civil society organizations to disseminate the message that there will be process happening. And once the process is happening, I mentioned the coalition building exercise, and some organizations which I mentioned make amazing work in this regard. And this can be open to and is being open to all stakeholders to participate. So in this way, those organizations who are accredited to the process, they can issue statements which include feedback on and specific expertise of organizations who have not been accredited but do have this knowledge which they can offer. And then issue-based events outside of the substantive sessions. They can be events which include stakeholders from outside. Once they realize, now when the process is moving forward, that there is a knowledge that they can offer, there is specifics of their work which could be contributing and informing to the process, to organize such sessions and also have events such as this one, to get information, to share knowledge, to have the know-how around the process, because there is a lot of substantive knowledge and a lot of developments which are happening. And events exactly like this one help organizations to be on top of the things and share information.
Thank you for those very important points, Pavlina. Indeed, I agree. Timea, did you have anything you wanted to share from your perspectives on these last questions online?
Nothing really that hasn't been said. Just the fact that I definitely support the idea that coalition building is important, and explaining and reaching out to potential stakeholders that are all in our networks to make them aware of the processes. In terms of safeguards and human rights, as Ian said, this is a convention that is still being developed in very early stages. So I think there's a lot to be understood yet of what is going to be considered under this convention as cybercrime. We are pretty vocal, and those of you who have heard me speak, you've heard me say it, that this should be a very narrowly focused convention on matters that relate strictly on serious crime that is cyber dependent. But this narrow scope, in our opinion, has to be met with very broad and robust safeguards as it pertains to human rights, fundamental freedoms, gender equality, and people in vulnerable situations. Of course, the way this is worded in the convention will depend a lot on, as I said, what is actually defined as cybercrime. So those of you who feel strongly about these issues, we'd love to hear from you to inform our positions, of course, as we move forward. Thank you again for the opportunity.
Thank you, Timea, and thank you very much for those remarks and for your participation today. I think we're going to wrap up now, a couple of minutes left. And speaking of networking opportunities, I think all of you can see the invitation on your desk. Hopefully, if you can't, there's more at the front for the social event this evening, hosted by Alliance of NGOs and UNODC Civil Society Unit for a social event at a Cocore, I think I'm saying it right, Italian restaurant in Vienna. For those of you in Vienna, sorry to Maya and Tarek, but we'll have a drink for you, and I hope that you can make it. Thank you very much on behalf of the Alliance for coming today. I'm going to hand back to Anders for the final word.
Yeah, thanks Ian and thanks for inviting us for that event. I'll try to be there. That sums up this side event. Thank you everyone for joining. I counted at least 35 people in the room and another 20 or so online, so that's very good. This is also being recorded, so there is a chance to see this later for those interested. But in general, reflecting on some of the comments that were made, namely the networking, the informal issue-based events, as Pavlina mentioned, the alliances, forming of alliances that Tariq mentioned. This is some of the things that the civil society unit indeed is trying to help you with. So for those who are not familiar with that type of work yet, please do join our initiatives in the sort of process, not only in the Cybercrime Convention, but other processes related to UNRC. We work with umbrella networks that you can see on the screen, the Alliance of NGOs, the ONCAI Coalition, and the Vienna NGO Committee on Drugs. And just to mark it, the last thing is the What's On platform. That's a stakeholder engagement platform that we have developed a couple of years ago, and that is running live now. And we have about 400 plus profiles on that already with relevant stakeholders like yourself that are taking part in this platform. So we do welcome you to join that. I think my colleague will share the link on the chat online. If not, just come to me or any of my colleagues sitting in the room, and we will share with you that platform link. And it takes 10 minutes to fill it in, and that will give you some benefits in terms of inclusion. And anyway, without those few words, thank you again, and keep up the good work, everyone. Really well done. Thank you.